The idea is rooted in this understanding, and it's an idea we've bannered about in my business for a while, that the problem is actually the opportunity. And it really is a reframing of how to approach something in business when something goes wrong. How can we approach this in a way to deepen the relationship, to make the customer the hero, to deliver a value exchange the customer will remember for the rest of their lives? And I think we miss those opportunities way too often. And I've been working with this, going to this dry cleaner for over a decade, just here in my neighborhood, and they ruined 4 pieces of my clothing, a sport coat, 2 dress shirts, and a sweater that I wear a lot when I travel. It's my favorite sport coat, the one I probably speak in the most. And instead of dry cleaning them, they put them in a washing machine, shrunk them way down. I mean, I went to put the sport coat, it was a real misfire. They dug their heels in and they said, look, we can't replace these garments. I said, well, you ruined them. And they said, well, we're not so sure we ruined them. We think you washed them and brought them here. I said, why don't we just split it? A mistake happened. I said, I'm good with that. I said, you cover 50%, I'll cover 50%. I said, that seems fair. I'll own half the mistake, which, that was a big, I just didn't want to be going round and round about this. So he comes back and again digs his heels in. I finally said, let me just talk to the guy. I said, look, you and I had an agreement. We had a resolution. Now you want to go back and renegotiate or relitigate this. And I'm not sure why. I think I've been more than fair. So he said, well, would you take your half, 50% of your half in a store credit? I said, all right, look, I don't want to spend any more time on this. I just want it to be done. So we ended there. This is my favorite sport coat, and the one I speak in the most. So I wanted to go get a new one. So I went to Martin Patrick. Todd, who you've heard me talk about, my guy there, he said, I already sold you this sport coat. I said, yeah, well, it's ruined and I told him what happened. He said, let me see if I can handle that. I said, what are you going to do? He said, well, I know them and we do some business with them. And he said, maybe I can work it out. Well, the next day, Todd calls and he said, how about this? They'll pay for the full cost and tailoring of the jacket. And the hoodie was old, the sweater was old, so it didn't matter. And you cover the 2 shirts and it's done. And there's no more paperwork back. And I'll work out the details with them on the jacket. We're tailoring your jacket. There won't be any charge for that in your credit card. I'll work that with that. So obviously, that was the end of the solution. And I thought to myself, man, that dry cleaner, he had such an opportunity to with a customer, over $500. I've spent, over a decade there. Who knows what the totals, the lifetime value of me. Plus, my relationship with Todd, all the customers at Martin Patrick, their reputation. And so here Todd's now the hero, right? He saved the day once again. And didn't because of the way he approached because he saw a problem and he knew that was his opportunity. And I think that happens so often. We get spun up in problems and assigning blame and getting defensive without sort of recognizing, particularly in a sales or service business, that's your chance to be the hero. That's your moment of truth to really deepen a relationship with a customer. 2 shirts, 4 shirts, $500. No one's going to remember that in 5 years, but they're never going to forget how you owned the problem with them, made it your problem, and stepped up to solve it. And I just think there's a real lesson in sort of that philosophy. It doesn't matter whose fault it is now. It's okay. They're upset, and what are we going to do about that? And let's look at our new reality. And every problem is different, but I think just by and large, it's the right way to approach it. In an emotionally charged situation, it is good to take a moment of pause and collect yourself. Emotional regulation is really important when things are difficult. And so take a moment of pause and collect yourself and evaluate the reality. I call it, what is our reality? That's a question I used a lot. We have an unhappy client. We have this situation. And so accept the new reality. I think the third thing is you really ask yourself, Where is the opportunity I'm not seeing? And consider that. A fourth thing from a business perspective is evaluate the lifetime value of the relationship. Last thing is do the right thing. Just do the right thing. And I think more and less, that's a pretty good compass. And a lot of this comes down to empathy too. It is trying to understand the feelings and the experience of someone else. Like, what's giving rise to this? Even if it doesn't seem like a big deal to you, really trying to understand their perspective. It's like putting yourself, like you have this customer, their job's on the line, they're under all this enormous pressure. That's not your lived experience. But trying to understand where someone else is coming from, I think there's a lot of utility in that. By not doing that, you miss so much. You miss the opportunity to be the hero with your customer, to make the customer the hero versus the status quo. Those are those moments of truth that can really define a partnership and a client relationship.